Okay, and we are live for episode 235 of Trek Live. How we doing this morning?
Doing great. Excited to be back. Finally, I want to thank everybody for understanding the schedule change a little bit. But I'm excited to talk about Star Trek.
Yeah, we have a good bit to cover today. It's been a long time since we did a character spotlight show. This was kind of in our arsenal of recurring, rotating topics a while back. We did several of them. There's a playlist on our channel that kind of puts them all together. So this will be our first addition to that in quite some time. We're going to talk about Garak, who's obviously a big fan favorite. I know there's a well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there's a good reason to do this now.
Yeah.
At least from Dan's perspective, I'm really eager to hear some thoughts on that. So we're gonna talk about Garrick, all things Garrick, everything that kind of comes to mind for us. I'm right at the halfway point of rewatching Deep Space Nine as well, so we both have Garrick on the mind for sure. And then we are also at the halfway point of Lower Decks season 4. So I think it'll be a good time to kind of check in. We covered the first 2 episodes the last time we were here. I think it'd be good to check in on 3, 4, and 5, get caught up on that, see what we're thinking at the midpoint. So we're gonna do both of those things today, and really looking forward to it. Do you have any rewatch update before we get into all this?
I actually do. I try to make sure I at least had one episode to mention. I
Excellent.
watched Parallels. So that's the episode with Worf coming back on the ship from his Batleth tournament.
Yeah,
Which I think there was some mention of in Lower Decks, which I'm sure we'll get
yeah,
into.
yeah.
So yeah, which starts a lot of a few different storylines in season 7. But
Sure does.
yeah, I wanted to make sure that I got at least an episode in before talking about this. Besides Lower Decks, I've been watching Lower Decks obviously, but yeah, Parallels.
So I know you're taking it pretty slow with season 7 of TNG. You always do this with like you get to the
No,
last
I
season of the show and you screech to a crawl every time.
yeah,
It is like
this happened.
predictably
I
bad.
think it happened with Deep Space Nine. With yeah,
I think it always
it's a bad habit.
happens. uh, but Parallels is one of the episodes from season 7 that often gets picked as like season 7 kind of struggles along a little bit, a lot of middling to okay stuff, and then there are a few like big pops, like Lower Decks and the Pegasus. Parallels is one of them. Uh, did you feel that? Did you feel like kind of a breath of fresh air, really good? Do you think it's more kind of in the pack with everything else? Like how do you think about Parallels?
No, I thought it was really good.
Mhm.
I think especially for me, like since I'm taking it so slow, like I think any episode that I would have watched definitely pops. But
Yeah, that helps.
yeah, I think just the sci-fi concept of it all, I think really worked for me. And I like that it's a Worf episode. I think
Yeah.
those felt a little sparse here and there. So yeah, I'll always enjoy it. But yeah, I think just the way that my rewatch is going right now, I think any episode um, would have been I think higher up, in that B range, B plus range. So yeah,
I think it's kind of unique in the sense of like when you think about Worf episodes, especially in the Next Generation, as the show really gets rolling when you get into the meat of it, most of the Worf episodes really revolve heavily around like Klingon culture, like his conflict with, uh,
yeah, not really anything like on the ship, like
yeah,
bottle ship
exactly.
show. So
And if it
yeah,
does, it's usually like Alexander. Like you get episodes like New Ground with
true.
fatherhood
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah.
You don't like you said though, like it's not often kind of a I'm going to use the phrase like run of the mill, but like a crazy event in his life on the ship. It's
Yeah,
it's more
yeah.
either about conflict with Klingons back on the planet or uh, having to do with Alexander fatherhood struggles. So I always feel like it's kind of a breath of fresh air that we get like a little bit of a different flavor for a Worf episode, kind of unexpected, different kind of story that he's driving. Um, and a lot of good production design stuff too, like the subtle changes in the ship and the sets as the timelines change. Um, and Yeah, the scene with the ragged, like beat up Riker on the ship that's like getting the crap kicked out of it by the Borg in its home timeline is like really memorable for some reason to me. Like that's like
Yeah,
one of those like locked in my brain forever. Like that crazed, insane Riker yelling on the view screen. Like I don't want to go back. And it's just really good stuff. A lot of memorable stuff happening in Parallels. So
yeah, yep,
it's a good one. I finished season 2 of Voyager, season 4 of Deep Space Nine. I'm taking a little bit of I used to do this all the time. I would finish the season and almost like take a weekend off and kind of build the tension a little bit and like embrace the cliffhangerness of the season finales with a week off to kind of simulate the the old summer break.
break. Yeah,
I haven't been doing it as much recently. I usually just kind of keep right on rolling, but I took a little bit of a break. I'm going to get into season 3 of Voyager, season 5 of Deep Space Nine next weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. I mentioned this last time we were here. Season 2 of Voyager ends really strong. I really stand by. Like Voyager doesn't get more serialized than the end of season 2. Like you have story threads involving the Vidians and Dinara Pell, the female Vidian who has a relationship with the Doctor, kind of resolving itself and continuing on into resolutions. Things from Deadlock are playing out in resolutions. Obviously, all the Janeway and Chakotay stuff. The Starfleet Maquis conflicts that are bubbling are in resolutions really profoundly. And then in basics, it's tying up things from Meld with Suter and all the Kazon and Seska things that have been building for a season. There's a lot of building off of what the season had done, uh, pulling through the end of season 2, and it's really good. I think from like Deadlock on, there's innocence in there, which I think is maybe not quite up to the same par as some of these
yeah,
other episodes, but like I think the Thaw is good. That might be the episode of Star Trek that has grown on me the most since I saw it first. Like I was not a fan of it when I was young. I thought it was wacky and weird
yeah,
and over the top and silly. And I think it's scary. I think it gets fear really well. I think they get to the core of it, and the bizarre imagery I think is aged well as like a you know the over the topness of it I think is good. I think it's well done. Uh, and I think Michael McKean as the clown and fear embodiment is
crushes.
amazing. I think it's an amazing
Yeah,
guest star performance. And then Tuvix is in there, Resolutions is in there, Basics is in there. Like it's a really strong run at the end of season 2. I wouldn't say it ends better than DS9 season 4 because DS9 season 4 is phenomenal, one of the best seasons of Star Trek ever, I think. But they're closer together at the end than they are at the beginning. That's for sure. Alternating those seasons at the end of that run is pretty good. Bouncing episodes, um, really strong stuff. So it's a high point in the rewatch for sure.
yeah.
Um, all right, let's get right into the topic at hand. We'll talk about Garak first. We'll do our character spotlight for the first 20 25 minutes or so, however long we kind of roll with this, and then we'll touch on lower decks before we get out of here. Um, Obviously, Garak is always front of mind for people. He's a big time fan favorite character. He's always been. He continues to be, and we'll get at why we think that is. But I know you just consumed some.
Uh,
So talk a little bit about why Garak's on your mind right
I'm
now.
not
Somebody
done
who
yet. I'm
knows.
probably three-quarters
Okay.
of the way done with it. But yeah, I think one of the reasons why we wanted to do this obviously was because of where Bill is in his rewatch, but also I'm listening to a Stitch in Time,
Hmm.
um, which is the book that's kind of it's hard to say prequel or like kind of after the fact of Deep Space Nine, but it's kind of everything, and it's really a deep dive into um, the Garak character, obviously, and what makes him really tick, and you know, I don't know, it really has everything you'd want in a book about Garak, which is hard because I think this is the second book I've ever read / listened to that is Star Trek. So Jake might kind of thoughts with a grain of salt, but no, it's really good, and I think it's interesting that it's just really well written, and it's interesting the way that it adds to Deep Space Nine, and it kind of changes my perspective on Deep Space Nine. And I think it's gonna be tough when I get there because, yeah, how am I gonna feel? You know, is this canon? Is this just a kind of an additive? Um, but no, I just think that, for whatever reason, and I think that it gets to it in the kind of the book, but I always forget how important this Garak character is to the overall show, and to keeping that connection with the station's neighbors, and all that. So yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into some really good episodes, but it's hard too with this um, with this character, because he has really some really good moments that aren't really necessarily a Garak centric episode, and I think it's really common in Deep Space Nine, obviously, because it's so serialized. And but no, it's just reading this book made me really appreciate the performance, but also just that character setup in general. Like I love that we have this exiled kind of character who's very mysterious, and the mystery continues into this book, obviously. But yeah, I just think that the Garak character has such a lot of meat on the bones, and just beautifully written, but also the performance is really kind of takes it over the top.
Well, that kind of alluded to something that I was definitely going to ask somebody who hasn't read the book or listened to the novel, the audiobook. Um, like, I really feel like I think the obvious sort of thing that makes Garrick such a beloved character and fascinating character is that there's no easy answers to anything. Like everything leaves you with it's so subjective. Everybody's going to read different things about him differently.
Yeah,
Friend or foe? Where are his loyalties? Is he? You know, what's the nature of his friendships with these various people? Like, why is he into Bashir? That different people have different thoughts on that. Why is he into? What's the real story behind all these things that he does and why he is the way he is? Like,
yeah,
there's no like concrete backstory, but there's just enough imbued in his character, and he hints at things and leads you to believe things that, depending on who you are and what you kind of take to, will kind of allow you to kind of build your own backstory. And I guess my question is like, does the book keep doing that? Does the book give answers to questions? Does it lead to like more concrete backstory or answers to some questions, or does it still do what the show does and kind of not give easy answers to anything and build on those kinds of things? Like, do you feel like you know more about Garrick than you did, like in a concrete way, or does it just give you more questions that you can kind of bat around yourself?
yeah. I mean, it's really hard to explain, because I think the beauty of the character is like he's very calculated in what information he provides.
Yeah,
And it's similar to that in the book, and in the show I feel like it's very calculated. And but just the beauty of it is he telling the truth or
yeah,
not?
no, no,
And I think that's a common thread through the show as well. It's what is he saying that is real? And also, what do we say to, like, what do, as we, I mean, the reader and kind of the viewer of the show, like, how are we interpreting what he's saying?
yeah,
But also, like, there's constant dance between, well, what do we reveal to Garak as far as like Starfleet is concerned, obviously, because we don't really know where his loyalties lie. And I think um that's the one of the biggest things in the book and in the show. I think you kind of realize is like, Garak is really good at kind of finding that fine balance of that dance, but also like how he develops that throughout his kind of um, time on the station, and then on, obviously off the station. I'm trying not to be
yeah.
really I don't want to give anything away as much as possible because, like, I don't know if you guys know, but it's narrated, you know, by the actor who played it. Like, it's,
Mhm.
you know, he also wrote the book, so I think there's
Sure.
some, um, you know, obviously it's just really good because I want to talk about it, but I don't want to get into really specifics because I want you all to really
Right.
listen to it and discover it because it's really good, and I think um, like even someone who you know maybe prefers listening to content and to things, I think it would be it's really good. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, but I think it's really because I think it does a really good job of really staying true to the character, obviously. So, um, but yeah, I think there's um, I think in the back of your mind, and this is the beauty of the character, it's like there's always going to be a question mark. And so I think one of the best things about the book, and then kind of the later seasons of the show, it's um, you start to kind of realize that how good Garak is
Yeah.
at doing this dance. So, yeah.
He it's interesting. Like I always think of that scene in The Wire when he's telling these stories to Bashir that he says things that my read on it is always that almost everything he says is true. Like there's truth in everything he says, but it's not the way that he's present. Like he's when he tells stories that might lead you to think he's talking about himself, things that happen to him. They're probably not things that directly happened to him, but they're things that he knows about that impacted him, and that like maybe had a pivot point in his life. But
Mm-hmm.
it's all in the context. Like he doesn't give the full context and doesn't tell stories that reveal deep truths about himself. But he doesn't pull things completely out of thin air either. Like there are things that he's telling that matter to him and that
Yeah.
happened to him in some capacity, or maybe happened to people around him. But they're not. There's an element of truth to everything he says. When he says, it's all true, especially the lies. I think that's true. I think that's really what he does. He doesn't lie. He doesn't pull anything out of his butt. It's all true in
Yeah.
the eye of the beholder. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that's what makes him so interesting. It's a constant puzzle to like put together. Like, what does it mean? Like, how does it actually impact him, and what part of what he's telling you is coming directly from him, and talking about things that actually happened to him directly. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and what he's telling you matters. Like he's telling you things that you know come from somewhere within him. Like if you believe that, if you believe that everything he's telling you is true in varying sorts of contexts, he's telling you those things for a reason, and and they matter to some extent. And figuring out why and how it all adds up is the fun of his
Yeah.
character. There's nothing easy about anything he tells you,
Mm-mm.
and yeah, that's rare in a character anywhere, let alone in Star Trek. I think somebody who lives life that way, and yeah, and like where his loyalties lie. Like I always kind of read that to be it's complicated. Like his loyalties lie to Cardassia, but it's not the Cardassia that currently exists. He doesn't like the status quo on Cardassia. He hates the current leadership. He hates the government. He hates the people who make decisions and why things are happening the way they're happening. But he loves the Cardassian people. He loves Cardassian history. He wants to see a different kind of Cardassia, and he will do whatever it takes to try to get Cardassia to where he wants it to be. So if that means helping the Federation to upend the current status quo on the planet, he will do it. But he won't turn his back on. He's not a traitor to Cardassia. He doesn't dislike the Cardassian people. He doesn't want to see anything bad happen to the civilians, the people who live there. He's got to be like he's loyal to his people, but he's not loyal to uh, the fascistic, horrible government that is making decisions and
Yeah.
driving policy and you know
Mm-hmm.
driving his exile.
Yeah.
So that's that again leads to a lot of complicated decisions, and he never
Mm-hmm.
has easy choices to make. about how to deal with information that he's privy to because of living on the station and his associations with Starfleet, the Federation, and Bajor. Um, he's kind of a man in the middle of everything and has to navigate everything that comes his way to try to like you know bring change to what he loves
Yeah.
from a distance. He can't
Yeah.
even do it from where he wants to be doing it. So
Yeah.
I think he's an all timer. I think he's definitely one of my favorite characters. Uh, my other question to you is I looked it up because I'm always kind of curious with these recurring characters. So there's like 175-ish, 176, depending on how you count them. Whether you're asking me or Jim from Trek Ranks, you can get different answers on how to count episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
somewhere in that 175 range for Deep Space Nine, right? If you had to guess based on your memory of Deep Space Nine, how many episodes do you think Garak was in? Just based on like the impression that he made on the show
Uh,
and what
I don't
your guess.
know.
I have the number. I looked it up on Memory Alpha, but I'm curious to
Okay.
see because I know what I generally kind of my brain kind of goes to, but I want to hear your impression as somebody who hasn't watched the show in a little bit. You've been away from Deep Space Nine for about a year now, right?
Yeah.
But it lives in your head and you have a pretty good idea of the show. Uh, what is your gut check guess on how many episodes Gareth appeared in?
Is it 15?
It's more than that.
More than that?
It's
Okay.
more than that.
Is it over 25?
Yeah. You're in the ballpark for
Ah,
sure. Yeah,
okay.
and that's what
Okay.
we're getting. That's what I was driving at. I mean, I go behind. I go if I don't pay attention and I'm not like thinking of the number and I watch the show and I think back, he makes such a big impression on the show. I think that my instinct would be to guess higher. I would have probably guessed something like 45, 50, something like
Yeah.
that, like a good handful of episodes each season. Number 33. So over a season of
Dang.
episodes.
Okay.
And once the show really gets going in like season 5, season 4, it's about 5 or 6 or 7 episodes a season. It's kind of like the average. He's only
Okay.
in one episode in the first season. He's in 3 in season 2, and then 5, 6, or 7 the rest of the way, varying from season to season. And in some of those, it's like he's in Way of the Warrior, so it's that 1 or 2, depending on who you ask, me or Jim
Not
or
true.
somebody else.
Yeah.
You might get a
Yeah.
different number. What you leave behind, you might get a different number depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
So the way I count it right here, I count 33 for the purpose of
Okay.
this. So um,
Okay.
that's less than I would have thought. It's more than you would have thought. You kind of went
Yeah.
low. I would go high, and that just kind of speaks to like the nebulous kind of weird impact he has on the show. Um, and you kind of hit on something earlier too. Like some of the episodes he appears in, he's obviously really heavy. The episode's about him. You think of stuff like The Wire and
In the
uh,
pale
in the
moonlight.
Pale Moonlight. He's so heavy in that. After Image
Yeah.
in season 7 with Ezri,
Yeah.
it's about his claustrophobia. Like he's like the lead basically. He's got episodes where he's
Yeah.
essentially the lead character, or in the A plot in a big critical way.
Yeah.
Um, in the two-parter in season 3 with different names, Improbable Cause and Dies Cast. He's real heavy in those. He's real heavy in the season 5 one with on the Dominion penal colony with
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Purgatory Shadow and by Inferno's Light. He's real heavy in those. So he's got episodes like that where he's real to the core, and then he's more supporting in others. I just watched at the end of season 4. One of his episodes in season 4 is Body Parts, which is the one with Quark thinking he's going to die, sells off his body to Brunt, and finds out
Yeah.
no, he's not going to die, and Garak gets hired to kill him basically. So he's very supporting in that. He doesn't show up until about halfway through the episode. He's got a few scenes. He's really funny,
Hmm.
but his range is good. Like just because he's there, he doesn't need to be the head of the episode to be there, and
Hmm.
he can be really supporting as well. Um, so that kind of speaks to the flexibility of his character too, and how easily he kind of fits right into the ensemble when he is there.
He's got enough to, meat on the bones as a character to take the lead, but also to have these great, 1 or 2 liners that really
Yeah,
add to the episode.
yeah, like the regulars are. I mean, if it's a Major Kira episode, you're going to see Chief O'Brien in some capacity somewhere along the way. He may be
Yeah.
a heavy supporting player. He may be like a bit player. He might have a scene, that's kind of a throwaway moment so that he's there. And Garrett kind of, you know, fits the mold there. He can pop in and be a little bit part, or he can be a heavy hitter, um,
Mhm.
and anywhere in between. Um, I love his relationship with Ducat. That's a huge. I mean, the relationship with Bashir is obvious and speaks volumes about. It's a huge part of the Garak, you know, oeuvre. But the Ducat stuff to me is just as good. He's not on screen with Ducat nearly as often, but when he is, you can just feel like the hatred and the deep history of
Mhm.
backstabbing and distrust and just dislike. Um,
Yeah.
I love the callback. I'm at the end of season 4, so I recently watched The Way of the Warrior, and they have that great scene where they're fighting the Klingons together, like at an airlock, side by side. And later on, after the Ducat turncoat, and he goes to the Dominion. Ducat or Garak calls back to that and talks about like I was so tempted to shoot him in the back while I was with him. And the audience is thinking the same thing. Like you had that chance to like kill all the Klingons that are invading the station, and you could put the cut out of his misery.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and he regrets it. I love and that just speaks to Deep Space Nine's like, that's the kind of stuff Deep Space Nine's so good at. It doesn't let those things go, you know,
By
uncalled
the
for.
wayside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
remembers things that happened episodes ago, seasons ago, between two characters that have a deep history.
Hmm.
They don't just forget it happened or not mention a big moment like that.
Yeah.
Civil Defense is another one. I know that's a big favorite of yours. There's great scenes with Ducat and Garak trading insults that are real cutting
Yeah.
and you don't even. What's great about it is sometimes you don't even know what they're insulting each other about. Like you can tell they're talking about things that happened in the past that you don't know about. It's like being a new guy at work and being in a mix with two people that don't like each other with a long history, and you can kind of tell that you don't know any of the history.
Yeah.
It's kind of for you to piece together like what the heck is with these two people. I love that. I love the way that they play that. So that's a big favorite element of the Garak, and I think that's a big driving force of the loyalty thing we talked about. That he loves Cardassia, but he hates people like the guy. I think that
Yeah. And
really
what
puts
they
that on the
stand
forefront.
for. Yeah.
Yeah,
This
and what they
career, this
yeah
career
yeah
military person. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah yep yep.
Yeah.
So um, anything specific with Garak's character that kind of looms large in your mind?
No, I just I think I really love just that um I don't think we've talked about it yet, but the Bashir
Yeah
um kind of character and how he interacts with Garrick. I think um sometimes he feels like the middleman between everyone else and Garrick
yeah
at some
love that.
points. And then I love their just intellectual dance. I think that's really good, and it gets fleshed out a lot more in the book. Um, but yeah, I just love that. I feel like sometimes we're the audience as far as Bashir, and then Garrick is kind of taking us on this little ride and this little what is true and what isn't, um, and then again, I really love the exploration of the backstory of Garrick and kind of how he got to where he is, which again um, it gets fleshed out in the book, obviously, but in the show, I think there is some mystery to the character about his loyalties, obviously, but specifically which entity. And I think again, like some of the secretive kind of backroom kind of programs that are in every alien species, I think less is more, but I think we get a little bit more information about specifics. But yeah, I think it's just a really good character, really fleshed out with again this perfect balance of mystery and then just actually giving us semi-concrete information. Again, you don't really know, but yeah, I love the kind of the backstory with you know with him with the order, obviously, but um, I I don't know. The book changes my perspective on the order a little bit, and I think that's gonna be really hard for me to shake. So
Mm.
yeah, it's
That intrigues me. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the Bashir thing is a big one. I mean, some of it you get the impression because they introduce so much about Bashir's character later on. Um, but the beginning of the Bashir Garak thing, Bashir's so kind of taken with and intrigued by, is he a spy? And the way that Bashir's character kind of evolves into, an episode like Our Man Bashir, that's his thing. He likes James Bond spy kind of stuff, and he becomes a Section 31 guy, and he gets
Hmm.
sucked into all that stuff. And it turns out that Bashir's I like the way I have mixed feelings about some of the stuff they introduced Bashir with the genetically enhanced background and all that, like kind of late in the
Yeah,
game. But retroactively, it does make sense that Bashir relates to Garak on that level. That this is a
yeah,
guy with secrets and
yeah.
has a complicated past that he holds tight and doesn't want to let out, and has a whole like side of himself that is a state secret in his mind. Like he cannot reveal this ginormous, incredibly important part of his background. Uh, that was not intentional early on because that didn't exist yet in the character, but when you go back and you watch the show again, and you have all these things in mind. It really enhances, I think, why is Bashir drawn to Garak? Like, what makes him interested in chatting him up and having lunch and getting drawn into these complicated, conversations. And you almost wonder if, like, again, there's all kinds of conversations out there, and people read all kinds of things that I get, and I see them too. Why Garak is so intrigued with Bashir, I think they're all valid. But I think one of them is also that I think Garak picks up on this is a guy who's, you know, got his own secrets and is obviously like holding some things tight. I think when you're like that, you can kind of pick up on other people who are holding on to things too. So it's just like it makes that relationship so much more three dimensional and complicated. And our man Bashir kind of gets called out as like a. I think sometimes people simplify it as like this James Bond homage when it's a real kind of deep dive into that friendship and the different ways that their brains work, kind of, but on the same level. Like they have similarities, but they see things differently and they value different things.
Hmm.
And I really like that. I think the more into the Bashir Garak friendship and complicated uh, dynamic that they have, you get. I think the more episodes like that will resonate with you. Uh, so, yeah. Um, yeah, just really good stuff. I mean, the Wire, Improbable Cause, Dice Cast, In the Pale Moon. I mean, you can't overlook the fact that if you're the kind of person who, like many do, who think In the Pale Moonlight is the Deep Space Nine like hallmark.
Peak,
Like
pinnacle. Yeah.
if that's the episode for you, if that's your favorite Deep Space Nine episode, like it is for many people, you can't overlook the fact that Garrick is right there. Like he is a lead character in that, and it relies so heavily on all of these key character facets. Like these
Yeah.
things loom so heavily in that story, and allow that story to move forward. So not only is he heavy in several episodes as a recurring character, many of those episodes are big favorites. The Wire again, those two episodes from season three. These are classics that often get put in, top 10, top 15, top 20 kinds of placements. If you're looking at, what are people's favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine, I think it all adds up. That it just makes sense. Like people love Garrick, people always cite him as like an all-time favorite character. It just makes sense that episodes that heavily feature him align on those kinds of lists, and they do. So it all kind of adds up.
Hmm.
Um, all right, well, you definitely made me want to check out the audiobook. I'm very, I mean, I could get the book, but I'm very eager and curious to hear Andy Robinson's voice as Garrick read this. I think
Yeah.
that's really alluring. I'm interested to hear. Uh,
Because it is Garrick. Like there's it's pretty much like a another episode or a little mini series about
yeah,
Garrick.
that's
Because
cool.
it's not just some, because there's some, with audiobooks there's some hit or miss on some like people who narrate stuff, but he he does his best to also like change his inflection and his voice to specific characters. So he does like a Quark, he does an Odo, like it's and so he really has fun with it, and I don't know. But I think that's this is not obviously I've not obviously, but for your guys' information, I have listened to a good amount of audiobooks, so I feel like I can give a good accurate depiction of like there are some good narrators and there are some just like kind of middle of the road narrators, and this is probably one of the best that I've listened to, just because he puts in the effort to change up his voice a little bit, and also it's just like it's even however like old the show is, we get another episode, so to speak, of Garak, because it is like actor who played it, and so yeah, it's really good, and I can't recommend it enough. Even if you're not really into books or into the literary universe, you don't have to have read this book or know about this series. It's you can go into it just not knowing.
That's what makes it so
anything.
tempting to me,
Yeah.
because so many of the literary corners of the Star Trek universe are and I love the fact that it's like this, and people are so invested and can get so invested in these like
Mhm.
serialized connected stories. I think that's awesome. But I did it to myself. I got too far behind and wasn't proactive, and now there's this mountain. I feel like a person who looks at Star Trek from the outside looking in and goes, "Man, I'd be kind of curious to try that, but there's so freaking much of it. Where do you even start? Do I want to commit to all this?" Like that feeling is what I feel with a lot of literary stuff. It just feels so big and insurmountable in some ways, and the fact that this
You
kind
could
of
you could say that about like the TV, like the shows, and
that's what I
so
mean. Yeah, like I wonder how many people look at it and go, "I'd like to try it, but there's so much."
yeah.
Like coming up on 1,000 episodes in a few years, maybe it's a lot. I mean, so yeah, but the fact that it's so approachable as like a standalone novel, that
Yep.
if you've seen Deep Space Nine, that's kind of all you need, and
Yeah.
it's not relying on other parts of like the literary world of Deep Space Nine, uh, is is good. So
Mhm.
um, I hope to check that out soon, and maybe we'll report back and talk more about it if we both wrapped it up down the line. So.
Yeah, it's almost like if I'm throwing back to like see it or skip it,
Mhm.
I'm like throwing all that out. You must listen to this audiobook. It's a must listen.
So
You have to. It's I can't say enough good things about it. It's really good.
when you get to Deep Space Nine again, do you think it's going to live in your head? Like when you're looking at Garak, even all the way back in like season one, season two, like do you see it as something that's going to like loom large in the way you? Do you think you'll see things differently having read it, or
Yeah,
having
I think
knowing
so.
the story?
Yeah, big time.
That's
And
cool.
I think it explains. I don't know. It just you. I don't know. I think it's just gonna help me with the character. I think a lot, discerning what's true, what's real, and it just explains a lot.
Yeah,
And it definitely is some like spoilers for some of the episodes, but I've already seen those episodes, obviously, and
sure.
see, so
Yeah,
it's just I think it's just gonna add a new wrinkle to the character, and uh, so yeah, I think it does exactly what I think the literary universe. It just really adds the backstory and the characters that I don't think necessarily could be done in the TV show, obviously, and I think it really picks up um, and does some of the heavy lifting that I think a show could never do.
right.
Um, which is sad because I think it's I'm guessing like a lot of the the backstory types of novels and books really do. Um, I think would be really cool in the TV show, but I don't know.
It's so
It's
detailed
hard,
when you
and
get
maybe
into
it's a and maybe it's a discussion for another day as far as where the franchise is at the moment. But I don't know if we'll ever get like a backstory type of show like um, Picard was, unless it's about like a really big name
Sure. Oh yeah,
character.
yeah.
Um, yeah, which is kind of frustrating, but is what it is.
Yep, that's true. But it's really fun. It makes me excited to keep going with Deep Space Nine and keep looking at the Garak character. And um, he's an all-timer. Definitely I think his reputation precedes him as like a big favorite. It makes sense. It adds up. And
It's such a cornerstone to that show,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and so I can't not think of Garak if I'm thinking about Deep Space Nine. It's just such a core character
Character,
to that
yeah,
show.
and
Yeah,
embodies a lot of the characteristics of the show, like the moral complexity. Deep Space Nine like loves that stuff and really takes pride in exploring, you know, that there are no easy decisions, in these things. Like maintaining the Roddenberry future is hard work, and you have to power through these hellish, difficult
yeah,
situations, and it doesn't come easy. It takes hard work to live up to those ideals. And Garrick is like that. He's doing that in his own way, from a different perspective and from a different kind of home base as a Cardassian. But he's having the same struggle that a lot of these characters are having, which is just really well done and core
and
to
I
Deep Space Nine.
think it would have been easy to shelf his character and his kind of relationship once we can move past the Bajoran kind of Cardassian kind of conflict,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just make him be part of the good guys. But I think
Yeah.
again they don't shelve it. They do a good job of
Mm-hmm.
like staying true to keeping the Cardassians kind of involved in the show, but
Yeah.
also Garrick's loyalties where they lie. I think it's
100%.
yeah, really good.
Yep. Cool. So let's pivot into our kind of last section here today. Halfway point of Lower Decks. We haven't talked about 3, 4, or 5 yet. We talked about 1 and 2.
Nope.
Um,
Yeah.
but I guess real quick, 3 was in the cradle of Vexilon, which is the ring planet, ring structure environment. I don't even know what to call it. It's not really a planet, but it's powered by an old computer that's malfunctioning, that has an operating system that needs to be updated, and there's some cool Boimler like leadership lesson kind of stuff. There's hazing going on with the new lieutenants. Something green, something borrowed, something green is the Orion 10D backstory uh, uh, episode, and the most recent episode, Empathological Fallacies, is a T'Lyn episode
Yes.
with 3
Which
days
I
later.
will.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I will point out there was a little typo. I think that
Yes,
a lot of people on Twitter were talking about. I think that was kind of fun. It's kind
yes.
of get that from Paramount. But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
No, yeah. So just real quick, those are the sort of basic log lines to refresh people's memory if they need a refresher. I doubt if you're watching us, you do. But uh, do you have a favorite of those 3? Does something kind of stand out? What do you think about the season as a whole?
uh,
So far?
it's really good.
Mhm.
It's I don't know. It's so hard to nail down because I feel like we talked about this a few weeks ago. I feel like I've got to readjust
Yeah.
to coming into Lower Decks, but sometimes I feel like I've got to readjust to my like preconceived notions about animated shows
Mhm.
and how it's not going to be storylized or serialized, and how it's not going to be I don't know, it's not going to hold the franchise in and the show and a good light. It's going to make fun of it, but
Mhm.
again, like a few episodes in, I'm like, no, this is Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This
Mhm.
is really good. I think this is just a humoristic kind of telling of some of these really kind of funny shows, and I think it's really uniquely Lower Decks, and I love again, I still love the focus on this our crew, which is obviously Lower Deckers, but I think I like that we're still getting backstories and stuff.
Yeah.
With something green, something borrowed, or something borrowed, something green,
Yeah. I do.
and yeah, it's no, it's really good. still solid Star Trek. I think the product on screen is still really good, and I love that we're still chugging along. I can't believe we're in season 4 already. But no, these 3 episodes, I think, again, are really uniquely. Um, I think the one where it still feels unique, and um, I like that they're still exploring, um, promotion, but also this new character that I'm really liking. And then it's just, again, it ends with this really heartwarming kind of Star Trek theme of, you know, how like there's they're together in this kind of lower deck. Kind of there's a badge of honor, but no, I think it's still good. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's
That's good.
still really good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think my favorite of the three is the most recent one, pathological fallacies. Um,
Hmm.
I think I love the twist. They had me going. I thought it was the Betazoid because we've seen that before with Luxana. I thought they were gonna go down that
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
I thought I had it pegged, and the fact that it was Talin struggling to fit in, and having mixed feelings about where she is and dealing with all that, like, was kind of the cause of this. I think that was a really good twist. And you know, with Lower Decks, it usually comes down to, I think, two things that really, the sort of two keys, I guess I should say, to like getting me completely on board with an episode are, I love it when it's a kind of workplace comedy, when it's about relatable coworker management kinds of things, the way TNG often was. So in the third episode, the Boimler, being a manager, being in charge of something and struggling
Yeah.
um, to let go and not micromanage is a real lesson, and I like that Lower Decks goes
Yeah.
there in their own way.
Which, yeah, that's cool because Wesley had the same like
Yes,
type of like question to Riker, like that Boimler has to Lynn. It's
yes,
so good. Keep
yeah.
going.
No, that's exactly right, and I think that's one of the things Star Trek does really well. It always has, and I think uh, of the current shows, Lower Decks is the one of the currently running shows that is most equipped and does most successfully hit on those things. Just the story structures of,
Yeah.
of Discovery and Picard obviously were not really calibrated to allow for those kinds of real world lessons to be like prominently featured. Strange New Worlds doesn't tend to go there as often in that kind of way, but Lower Decks does, and I love when Star Trek does that because it taught me a lot as a young person, and those lessons enlarge my mind still to this day, and I like that it's a show that can do that and wear it on its sleeve. Um, so that kind of won me over in that episode, and then you know in the most recent episode, even when the humor is like completely crazy and over the top and it's loud and chaotic, and it might or might not, depending on the context and my mood and all that thing, like it may or may not be my thing, right? Like depending on that week and what kind of humor it is and what the source of it is. If the episode can like stick the landing with a scene like Mariner and Talin in the little closet talk, like that, to me, like that is
Yeah.
so undeniably Star Trek that I don't even care what else happens. Like I can it's not even like about forgiving. Like I can power through even when the humor might not be aimed directly at me to get to that. Like, and sometimes the humor is aimed at me. Sometimes I think it's genuinely really funny and it gets laugh out louds out of me. And this episode did. Some of it really was. I felt like it was aimed at me. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I feel like the humor is not. But in this particular case, even if it wasn't, I would have been satisfied because of how good I thought the Talin story was and how uniquely Star Trek it was. Um, like Talin feels like you know a Seven of Nine kind of a character, a Data kind of character, like that outsider, struggling to fit in. That's kind of a relatable feeling for a lot of people, and I think she's a really welcome addition to the show. I think like we said last week or last time we were here. uh, introducing a new character like that in the fourth season of this show is obviously an intentional choice, and
Yes.
it works. Like it shakes up the ensemble and the relationships and which characters get paired up really really well. Like we because of there being four of them, like we kind of got a lot over the first three seasons of Mariner and Boimler kinds of stories, and they're great and they're often really good. But we got a lot of them, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
Tandy and Rutherford stuff. And in season three, they did a lot of work to try to mix that up and put different kinds of pairs together. And adding T'Lyn to the mix just really breathes some cool new life into the opportunities to have these characters interact. And I think promoting them and making them lieutenants junior grade and having them still be lower deckers but a little higher on the scale makes it easier to pair them with the bridge crew too. I think it adds to the opportunities to uh, have Ransom and Freeman and Shax even more involved in these character stories. So I think the season's delivering on a lot of cool new things that is breathing some life. So uh, yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I will say like I loved the Tendi Orion story and something borrowed something green. I hated like I don't like to stick. I don't like to be negative, and I don't like to hit on these shows at all. But I will at times when something really doesn't work. I'll be honest, like I was with last season, the Peanut Hamper episode. Uh, I did not like at all the Mark Twain, Boimler, Rutherford
Yeah.
subplot
That.
for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like those two characters are smarter than that. I think that was like I think where lower decks can falter for me at times is when I feel like to get to a silly situation, they dumb the characters down a little bit. And I felt like that's what they did there, and I didn't buy that Boimler and Rutherford would be that uh, ridiculous for that long. I guess I just didn't that did not work for me at all, and it hurt the
And
episode.
think that it would translate
Yes, that's
to.
what killed
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Like
I have
that's
a
the
really
thing
hard
that took
time.
over
Yeah.
the top.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had the same violent reaction to it if it would have just been like a cute. That's how they resolve their conflict. That's fine. But to go to the captain and suggest that ridiculous idea with an alien in a conflict kind of situation, I just think Boimler and Rutherford are both better than that, and I want them to be better than that, and I want Freeman to be better than that to not to listen to something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes the show embraces the ridiculous successfully, and sometimes it's not successful. And I think in that particular situation, it was a step too far and not kind to the characters. When I think oftentimes the show is very kind to the characters. I think the show is very kind to the characters in the in pathological fallacies to Mary or to Lynn, uh, is in particular the way that they handled that at the end. Uh,
Yeah.
that's what I like on Lower Decks for me. Um, yeah, we have Rob in the chat. Hoping we're well. Sorry he hasn't made
Hey,
his stream
Rob.
live as often lately. Life getting in the way.
All
We
good.
all can relate to that.
Yeah.
We
All
appreciate
good.
you stopping by,
Yeah.
um, showing love to Garak, and love to Lynn with the dry Vulcan wit as well. Cyber Honey's here too. Um,
Welcome.
welcome as well. Um, yeah, it's yeah. I'm pretty happy with where Lower Decks is right now. I'm excited for the second half. Um, I think this most recent episode, uh, bringing back the sort of naked time, naked now fascinations. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
such a classic Star Trek trope, I guess, with the unhinged.
Kind
That
of.
yeah, that feels like I'm surprised it took four seasons for Lower Decks to do an
Something
episode
like
where
that.
like the
Yeah.
yeah.
But it
Um,
kind of played with our just because we thought it was gonna be because I think there's what's the episode at Deep Space Nine? I think I was like, oh, maybe they're gonna fascination. They're gonna try to fix that and maybe make it feel a little bit, but they kind of went the kind of opposite end of the um, spectrum here with maybe a more and I think it was beautifully done. So I really enjoyed that.
me too.
Kind of it played with our kind of we're gonna do this and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it definitely had me going. I thought it was going to be a fascination uh, kind of homage, but it turned out to be a Sarek homage. It's they tricked me and successfully so. Um, yeah, it's I'll give him this though too. Like there have been some really good shots of the Cerritos. I think in something borrowed something green. There's a couple shots of the Cerritos like in orbit of Orion that are
Yeah,
money shot
yeah,
lower deck
looks
ship
really
shots.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like really good,
yeah.
good stuff. They feel I feel like they're stepping up their game on that kind of thing. It looks really good. So a lot of props, a lot of things to like. Um, Rob's throwing some love to Tuvix, the premiere. So many awesome Voyager Easter eggs. I'll tell you what, like that I don't want to say it's like risen a lot. I kind of felt like I had that down a bit when I first watched it.
Maybe leveled
I
out.
think it
Maybe.
leveled out a little bit. I think I've watched it a couple of times, and I'd have it in the middle of the pack of these five. I think
Yeah.
I like it more than one and three, or more than three and four. But I think my two favorites are the Moopsie, I had no bones yet, I must flee uh, episode, um, and
And then this
five,
one,
and
yeah,
pathological
five.
fallacies.
Yeah,
I think they're my two favorites.
I would agree. Yeah,
Yeah,
two top episodes. Yeah,
yeah, they felt like the most. Yeah, just I think they did really good things in two with the dealing with the fallout of the promotions and um, yeah, like a spin on kind of a routine Star Trek mission that goes
yeah.
awry. Like I just felt like that kind of nailed the premise of the show
Hmm.
and was a fun time. Uh, and treated the
But
characters
I,
really well. Ransom was great
yeah,
in that. Like I thought that was a really strong episode.
but it did some dramatic things with like Mariner getting
Yeah,
over her like BS about promotions and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I love the fact that Ransom handled it the way that he did. I think that was really well done, and it was good to Ransom's character. Like I think sometimes it's easy to kind of chalk Ransom up as kind of like a meathead, you know, kind of like sometimes when they're not nice to Ransom, it's like how did this guy ever get promoted? Like how's this guy a first officer of the ship? That episode made you go like he's good, like he's a good
yeah,
officer. He's
yeah,
goofy and silly, and there's a reason he's not the first officer on the Enterprise, but he's a good he's a good dude. Like he's
yeah.
got some skills and he's good at his job. Um,
Hmm.
and I was glad to see that. I think he was really good in that. So yeah, just really enjoying it. I think I completely agree with what you were saying and what we talked about last week. It still holds true. I have to recalibrate coming off of Picard and Strange New Worlds. It's such an adjustment to embrace the animation and the lighter tone and the like. Yeah, I often talk about when I'm like even the old shows like Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Uh, when I reward those episodes that are like true to the premise of the show. I use that a lot. Like takes advantage of the setup and the unique qualities of that series. Um,
Hmm.
Lower Decks, the unique qualities of Lower Decks are that it's mundane. Like the missions are mundane. It's they're lower stakes.
Yeah,
You can't punish it for not feeling like big, profoundly important stories. That's literally the mission of the show. To kind of go back to you
hmm,
know feeling more run of the mill kinds of stories. And one of the things people complain about with the new shows sometimes is that we don't get that. We don't get that time to breathe with characters, and where you're not running from crisis to crisis and feeling like you're just getting to hang out with them. And Lower Decks is all about that. So it's like the answer to that, and
yeah,
gotta not punish it for not feeling important enough. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that.
yeah. Try to, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I think that'll about do it. We're coming up. We're just about over an hour. I think we started right around 10 o'clock. So, um,
Yeah.
any last thoughts on Lower Decks, Garrick, or anything to talk about today?
No, I don't think so. There's good stuff in chat. Rob said, this one thing that I really want to highlight that I feel like really nails the character. I love characters that aren't black and white, but shades of gray, and Garak definitely fits that
Hundred
mold. I
percent.
think that nails the. That just perfectly nails that character. So, and then yeah, Lower Decks is again, really enjoying it. Again, I probably cite this most recent one as kind of my favorite of the season so far. Which, not to knock any of the other episodes, it's just really enjoying it, and I can't believe we're already at halfway point.
I know.
It's crazy. It needs to slow down. Considering I feel like we're
about to be in the dry spell.
Dry spell for a good amount of time. So, yeah, but just really enjoying just Lower Decks in general, and yeah, only been a few missteps in my mind this season. So,
me too. That's how I feel.
Yeah, really enjoying it.
I'll throw some love real quick to Cyber Honey, who put in her top 5 Garak episodes. We didn't do a top 5, but love that you did here. Armin Bashir, we talked about that one. The Wire is obvious. We mentioned After Image, the season 7 episode with Ezri.
Yeah.
The Way of the Warrior, we mentioned with the Dukat stuff, but also, The Way of the Warrior, maybe the all-time Deep Space Nine scene to me is that root beer scene between Quark and Garak in Quark's bar, talking about
yeah.
how that's like really great.
Yeah.
And having those two characters talk about Starfleet and
perfect
Federation ideals and relating it to root beer is like really good. And Improbable Cause and Dies Cast, I think, is a definite candidate for that top tier. So thank you for sharing that list. You touched on some of the things we hit on earlier, and yeah, we echo a lot of that. Appreciate you both for stopping by and contributing to the chat and being loyal viewers all these years. We thank you both, and yeah.
Listen to a Stitch in Time if you haven't already. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, I think that's going to do it for today. We should be back in 2 weeks. Not sure what it's going to be about yet. I think in about 4 weeks, right? Or yeah, I guess 4 or 6 weeks will be. I'm trying to think like where we would be.
End of Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
Probably.
I'm sure at some point soon we'll be doing a season 4 wrap up like we tend to do when seasons end.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that's going to be the last episode of 2023, so that's going to bring up some opportunities to look at the 2023 retrospective, got some things about the year, what's 2024 going to look like. Maybe by then the actor strike will be done. We'll be seeing some stuff about Strange New Worlds in production. Maybe we'll get some updates on
Discovery final season. Yeah.
Academy, like what's next, like what are they doing? As the year plays out, I think if they get the actor strike settled up pretty soon, I think the fall winter push is going to be a lot of conversation about, at least in Star Trek world out there, like what's next. Now that Picard's done, Discovery's about to be done, Prodigy's in limbo, no man's land, unfortunately. There's going to be a lot of discussion about what the future holds, what's coming. The Section 31 movie at some point in the future as well. A lot to unpack. So we'll be following along and sharing our thoughts as things come about.
Yep. The discussion does not have to stop here. Twitter, Discord server, all great places to keep the discussion going about Star Trek, your favorite Star Trek, literary stuff, everything under the sun. So definitely check that out. And again, I want to thank everybody for watching. Rob and Cyber Honey and people after the fact. Obviously, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.